Welcome to PCS with Military.com. I'm your host, Amy Bouchatz, Military.com's executive editor. On this podcast, we talk about everything you need to know to make this military move season your best yet. PCS with Military.com is brought to you by Navy Federal Credit Union, proudly serving all branches of the armed forces, veterans, and their families. No matter where you are in your military career, Navy Federal Credit Union has the products and resources to help you navigate your finances. Learn more at NavyFederal.org. Our members are the mission. Now, let's get this PCS started. Moving with the military carries with it a whole host of logistical challenges. And once you figure out the whole packing and moving process, the benefits, entitlements, and payments from the military, the rules and regulations, information about your new hometown, and all the logistics involved in getting there, now you have to figure out one more really huge detail. Where are you going to live? For most military members and families, that means making 1 to 2 key decisions. Are you going to live on or off base? And if you're going off base, are you going to rent or buy a home? Today, we're going to talk through that decision process and then focus on the need-to-knows of buying while using your VA loan benefit. And since buying a home is something for which you really want to make sure you've got expert help on hand, today's episode has not one, but 2 home buying experts, Deonte Cole and Derrick Abbott. Deonte is a Marine Corps veteran and realtor with Keller Williams Realty in Tampa, Florida, and Derrick works with Deonte as a loan consultant with Caliber Home Loans. Derrick and Deonte, welcome to PCS with Military.com.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Awesome. Oh, I'm so excited because we really need the insider info on this stuff. I am wandering around in the woods over here. I have bought a home, but gosh, I would never sit down or pretend to advise someone on how to do that. So I'm so glad you guys are with us. So before anything else, I want to know how often our guests on this PCS podcast have moved with or without the military. And Deonte, since you're the veteran here, we'll ask you, how many times have you moved?
With the military, I've moved 6 times. Outside, even prior to that, I probably moved an additional 6 times. So probably 12 times in my lifetime, I've made a move.
And you guys have moved Oconus, so you've got all the street cred coming to and from Japan, if I remember
Exactly.
correctly.
We've gone from East Coast to West Coast and overseas several times. So yeah, it's been a journey over 20-year time period. So.
Man. So we know what we're talking about, and now you are a real estate expert, so we are looking to you for that. So Deonte, after you retired from the Marine Corps, you chose to become a realtor, something you've now been doing since 2019, right?
Yes, correct.
And Derrick, you work in home loans, something you've been doing since, I think we just talked about before the crash back in 2010-ish. So you've been at that since 2009, you said?
Yeah, actually a little bit before that. So we're talking the 2006, 2007 range.
Oh, okay.
Been going back that far.
Okay. And you have a special focus on VA home loans, which is like its own beast.
Yes, I do. I know that program better than any other.
Great. So you are a guy. So I'm excited to talk to you about that. Okay. So we have a few different subject lines to talk about on this. Deonte, I'm hoping you can first talk to us about the decision to live on or off base. As a Marine, you've done both, but also as a realtor, what do you tell people? How do you help them make that decision?
Well, there's no one size fit all. What I would tell people is based on their circumstances and their conditions. Of course, regardless of who you are, it takes certain requirements to be able to buy a home loan. And you have to be cognizant of that budget. I would tell them the pros and cons of doing both. The pros of living on base are, it's one less thing you have to worry about. The payments, the utilities, things like that are already taken care of. So, but if you have the ability to live off base and you are planning on living off base, I would say, if possible, I would say buy. The military is giving you an amount of money for housing already. And more often than not, in a home ownership situation, your mortgage is going to be a lot of times less expensive than what you're going to pay renting a property. And it's a great long-term wealth generating strategy. So if you're there for a period of time, 3 years, I have quite a few friends who still own their first homes that they bought when they were young military members, and that was one of their things that they were able to pay off and not have to worry about in the future, or potentially sell. But being able to generate and have an asset, I believe, is a great opportunity for military members who are receiving housing allowances.
Do you feel like you encounter a lot of people who are afraid of being stuck with a home that they can't pay, having those two mortgages or whatever? Like, I'm thinking about when we were stationed in Clarksville, Tennessee, we ended up being there a lot longer than we thought we would. So there's, one check in the box for should have bought a house. But then when we moved, the market wasn't great. And now people are trying to sell their houses and they can't they're like underwater essentially. Now they have their landlord when they didn't want to be, and so on and so forth. Do you encounter those fears a lot, and how do you address that?
Yeah, we definitely do. Of course, no one, if you're in a location for a short period of time, that does have implications as it relates to how the loan is structured, because there's a percentage associated with it. But I can give you a prime example. My neighbor right across the street from me is in the Army, and he just got orders up to the Pentagon. So he's been gone for about a year, and we got a property manager and rented his property out. Now that the market is better, his tenant is getting ready to leave, and we're going to put the house on the market for a profit for him to be able to sell. Not everybody wants to be a renter, to rent their home out. So that's a personal decision, because there are risks of property damage, things like that, and expenses that go along with it. But if you're able to do it, it's great to, if you like the area, to have a home there. And like I said before, if someone else is renting it out, you potentially are getting a additional revenue that someone else paying towards your principal on that property, which is reducing your what you owe, and you have the ability in the future potentially to recoup some of that in a potential sale, or if you are keeping the home long term. The other thing is, if you decide, what, I want to give this to make a move, and I don't want to be stuck with this home, and I want to sell it now. Depending on where you purchase the home, it could have potentially enough equity to be able to, still make a profit. I'll give you a prime example. I had a home, my first home that I purchased. I bought it, a little town home, for $170,000. I spent probably about $10,000 in the year that I lived there in renovations. I sold that home a year later for $260,000. That isn't what always happens, but if given an opportunity to be able to make that type of change and gain that level of equity, it could make a significant difference on your future purchases. So it's kind of making that money work for you versus just working for it. So.
Yeah. Okay, define equity. What does that mean? Like, let's not
Sure,
assume we
sure.
know what that means.
Well, it's basically your ownership, right? How much cash flow that you have within the property versus value. So it could be how much you've actually paid down the property itself, or it could be the increased valuation of that property. That difference is going to be your equity. How much of that potential property percentage of value do you have? So that could be, if it's $170,000 property, you paid $20,000 off the principal, you've got $20,000 of equity. Or it could be, it's a $170,000 home, you paid $20,000 toward the principal, and the house is now worth $200,000. Now you've got $50,000 of equity in that particular property. So that's essentially what it is.
Okay, so do you hear a lot from people who are sorry? Like, do you hear more from people who are sorry that they didn't buy, or from people who are sorry that they did buy? Like, one way or the other.
Sure. In a long-term career, I see more people who wish they would have purchased a home, because you don't know how long you're going to be in. A lot of times, sometimes it's short, sometimes it's a long time period, and having a home still has tax implications that are good for you. it still gives you a level of uh, ownership when it comes to buying other things, cars, interest rates, things like that. Majority of the time, if you own a home, people are willing to give you a reduced percentage for cars or anything like that because you have something of value that you own. So yeah, usually long term I see quite a bit that people say, I wish I would have kept that home. I wish I would have bought a home earlier in my career because I'd potentially be done with it or have a lot more equity that I can transfer into a different property.
Right. I think it's like one of those things that feels like a super scary risk in the moment and while you're dealing with it day by day, especially if you start talking about renters or managing it from afar, all that stuff. But then later, from the from the end of a 20-year career for you, it feels like, okay, like long view, it would have
Yeah,
been worth
I mean,
the
it's like an
problem.
investment, right? Any investment, I wish I had invested in, Facebook or Bitcoin back in 2003 or something, right?
Yeah,
It's
you and me both, buddy. Yeah, but did not, and here we
yeah,
are.
definitely. Right.
Totally. Oh man. Okay, so Derrick, give us a quick rundown on what exactly a VA home loan is and why or how it is different from other types of home loans. Talk to us like we don't know anything about home loans at all.
Okay, I can do that. I can take care of that. So, a VA loan is a loan that is specifically tailored to veterans or active duty military members. That's the first thing. You have to have that. Okay, if you were honorably discharged, you're good to go. Dishonorably discharged, you are not eligible. You do not get
Hmm.
rewarded for the benefit if you did not respect your tenure and your role in the military. Um,
And other than honorable, it's sort of like a in-between spot.
So
No?
there
Yes?
is, but with that, it's on a case by case basis because then we have to
Okay.
look at how long were you in? What did you do? Were you just a reservist
Yeah.
or active duty? There are a bunch of things that pertain to the actual military member themselves and how they manage their career that will give us a basis
Mm.
of whether or not they have access to the VA loan.
Okay. So, gotta be in, gotta be a vet, gotta be honorably discharged. Got it.
Those are the basic buy-ins to be able to get a VA loan. Correct. Um, so now the question that you asked about, well, what exactly is it? It is a backing from the VA. Okay, that is the VA saying if something goes wrong, we're going to back you up to a certain amount. Okay, that amount does change because you have some military members who use their eligibility more than once. So that's when
Mm.
I come in as a lender and I say, hey, do you own a house with the VA loan? They say, yeah, I got one now. I want to keep it or I want to sell it. No problem, we can manage that. So the big difference between a VA loan and the other one, besides the backing, is one, there's no mortgage insurance. None. Does not matter what the loan type, what the terms are, there's never going to be mortgage insurance. Okay, that's the VA's way of saying because you served, we trust that you're going to uphold your obligation in buying this home through our benefit, right? The next big thing that's the difference from majority of other loans is there's no down payment requirement. Now, that's not to say that you can't
Mm.
put one down, but you are not required to. You can go 100% financing immediately, step one, once you have a VA loan. And that's really, really huge because you think about some people getting out of the military, they might be PCSing, might be moving here, moving there. They may not have that cash reserve or they need to use it for something else, and that's big. That's really, really big. And then for VA veterans and current military members, there's actually a program out there that I can't go into too much detail right now, but with that 0% down that the VA allows you, you can actually get grants or other down payment assistance, which there's no down payment. So what does it go to? It goes towards closing costs. So there's in some scenarios you can have it set up to where you don't bring anything. So VA loans will give a lot of benefit to their members.
But it also comes with, correct me if I'm wrong, because again, we are way out of my area of expertise right now, but it also comes with some rules about the home. Like you have to actually live there. I can't go use a VA loan or my spouse's qualified VA loan to go buy a vacation home in Hawaii right now, which by the way, I would absolutely love to do.
So you are right about that. So the VA loan is for vets and active duty members to buy a primary residence. That means you have to be living in the home. Now, there are a couple of we'll just say little
Exceptions.
nuances that go into that, right? So let's just say, Deonte, he and his wife are married, right? Deonte is PCSed off somewhere else, but he wants to live in Florida. He wants to buy his house here in Florida where his wife's going to live in it. He can buy that primary residence here for her, okay? Even though he's PCS somewhere else, has orders somewhere else, his wife can satisfy the occupancy guidelines on a VA loan for him, okay? Now, let's just say that, she was just a girlfriend at the time, right? He wouldn't be able to do that because she is not his spouse. So there is a way that you can buy it as a primary residence and not necessarily be living there, but have someone else, aka a spouse, satisfy that occupancy for you.
And for how long does that have to be true? Because, like, let's say you're PCSing and she wants to join you, but you also want to buy this house. So there's like a cap on how long you have to live there before you can
There's
vacate,
no
right?
hard written rule about a cap about how long she does or does not have to be there. However, we are going to give a reasonable expectation of the time that she's going to be there, right? So if me as a loan officer, she comes to me and says, hey, he got PCS here. He's going to be there for 2 years, but I don't want to uproot the kids. But the minute the kids get out of middle school in a year, I'm going to be gone. That's something we're going to look at and say, hey, that might not work. Because essentially you're just getting this house for this short bit of time and then you're gone, So we're going to look at that on a case-by-case basis to see exactly what that rule of occupancy is and how long it's going to be able to be satisfied.
Got it. So you're crushing my Hawaii dreams right now.
We'll talk offline. I'll get you in there. We'll figure it out.
Let's pull over for a break to thank our sponsor. PCS with Military.com is brought to you by Navy Federal Credit Union. They might be called Navy Federal, but they don't exclusively serve sailors. Serving all members of the armed forces, they have the products and resources to help support you with your next move. So, even if you can't tell port from starboard, they'll still help you learn about mortgages and auto loans. Learn more at NavyFederal.org. Navy Federal Credit Union, our members are the mission, an equal housing lender. Now, back to the show. So you guys can maybe give us 2 or 3 misconceptions or things that people maybe simply don't know about the VA loan that they should, like hidden facts, myths, drama. Talk to us.
I would say the interest rate is something that a lot of people don't know about, that the difference and the credit qualification requirements. And he could probably speak to that a lot more because there is to get a conventional loan or a FHA loan, there are specific requirements for your credit as well as what that interest rate is going to look like. So
right. So let's talk about that for a minute. So, a lot of people think I got to have a 700, I got to have 20% down before I can buy a house, do anything. And that's just plain not true. Now, 10 years ago, you might have been in that boat. Actually, I take that back. 10 years ago, they were doing no income, no assets. You didn't have to tell them anything. But 20 years ago, that was the case. That was the rule of where you needed to be. Now for VA loans, you can actually get into those, down to 600, 580. You don't have to be at that 700. Is that the loan you want? No. But if that's where you are, we can find a way to help you out to get you where you need to be. So having perfect credit is not a requirement for it. And you can still get great pricing, get a great rate, have something affordable for what you want without having that 700 credit score. So that's a very big difference from where we at, let's say, compared to a conventional loan. Because where the market is right now today, conventional does want you at a 700 because everything with them is risk-based, right? A VA loan is not 100% risk-based. They're giving you the benefit of a doubt to a certain extent just because you were in the military, because you served.
That's right. And that percentage, that debt to income ratio is very different. So there's a different requirement as far as debt to income. That you don't have to have as low of a debt to income ratio as you would with other potential loans. Another misconception I would say is that people think that I can only get one VA loan, right? You could
want to go into that one.
Yeah, go ahead. You can.
So when it comes to using your eligibility, right? Once you get one, you don't have to, you're not done. You're not done. There is a term for all the listeners out there. It's called bonus entitlement. Okay. Once you call me and you say, hey, Derrick, I got this house, but I want to buy another one, or I want to rent this one out. We want to move because our family grew, or we got PCSed, or something like that. I'll say, okay, let me pull your certificate of eligibility. I'll go get that. And I have a calculator that I can run to see what the minimum or maximum loan amount that you can get is based off of what you've already used. All right. And it doesn't stop there, because now let's say that, let's just put a number. Let's say the max you can get based off the homes you already own, everything is $500,000, right? But the missus just fell in love with this $600,000 house. I mean, she fell in love with it. You can still use your VA entitlement to get it. You just may have to put a down payment down on it now. So you can still use it. You just may have to adjust what you have to bring to the table. And talking about myths about being able to use the eligibility, let's just call it what it is. Life will slap you sometimes, and there's nothing you can do about it, right? Military or not. So if something goes wrong, let's say it's a foreclosure or deed in lieu or things like that, that does not 100% automatically bar you from getting a VA loan. Depending on some of the circumstances and in terms of what happened with that, you very well may be able to use it again. There may be some limitations on how much you can use or what you have to be able to use as a minimum.
Talk to us a little bit about the funding fee. That's a thing, right? I'm not making that up.
No, that is a thing. That is definitely a thing.
So it varies. So there are some requirements in different states where you in most cases you have to pay a VA funding fee, but there are some small cases where you don't. One of the considerations, if you're a veteran who's 100% disabled, let's say you're here in Florida, they're waiving that VA funding fee for the veterans who are 100% disabled. That funding fee roughly runs about 1% majority of the time of the.
So it depends on a couple things for that. Just to add on to what Deonte was saying.
Sure.
When it comes down to the amount, okay, have you ever used your eligibility before? That's a big one. That's a big one. If you have, you're gonna have a slightly higher one than someone who's never used it. That first benefit, you're gonna get a little bit better of a deal because it's your first time using it. Okay. Depending on how much you're putting down in some cases, that will have an impact on it. If you're not putting anything down, that's perfectly fine. You're well within the guidelines. But if you are, that can have an impact for you as well. Okay. So normally it's going to be the 1.3 or 2.4 are what you're going to see. Based on the situation, there could be some other numbers that apply to that. And to add on also what Deonte was saying about the exemption. If you are receiving any type of disability, right, 100%, 10%, anything like that, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be exempt from it. Okay. That's going to show up on your certificate of eligibility that we're going to get. So me as a lender, I know up front when I'm creating your loan and I'm building it and I'm structuring it for you, I know within the first 30 minutes of that if you're even going to have one. And another little tidbit about that before I forget, because this is another misconception too. Normally, that fee, that percentage will get added onto your loan amount. You'll finance it, right? That's how a lot of military members do it. But you don't have to. You can pay that up front if you so choose to, which would obviously decrease the amount of interest you're paying out, because now you're not paying interest on another 2 or 2.5 or 1.5%. And another thing, your loan balance itself is just going to be smaller, so you're going to pay less. It may not be a huge difference, but it is still less money that you're paying over time.
And another reason that's a good thing is if you're in a location where you're PCSing in a short period of time, 3 years, let's say you're there, that increase potentially on your principal could have an effect when you're trying to sell, because in 3 years time period you haven't knocked much off the principal. So if your funding fee is on top of the cost of the home as well, you may not have moved the needle at all on what the price. If not, you owe in some cases more than what the property is worth within that 3-year time period. So if you're paying that funding fee up front, it does help you in the process if you're leaving, let's say, in 3 years.
Yeah, that's an excellent point.
Yeah. Oh, saving us money. I like it.
Definitely.
So, what are some of the biggest mistakes military members make when they're trying to buy a house or decide to buy a house during a PCS, maybe from home loan or real estate perspective?
First one for me is they make the assumption that if they're having any credit issues or concerns, that all I have to do is clear up this. If I clear up this, I'm good. If I do these A, B, C, and D, I can pay off my car. Things like this, I'll be fine, right? Versus sitting down with a lender and he or she being able to look at your circumstances and tell you the things that are going to give you the most bang for your buck as far as credit. If you're paying off your car, people are like, I don't have my debt to income ratio is significantly lower, but you don't have that credit history anymore that existed for that home payment. So a lender like him would likely tell you, if you're paying it down, great, but if you don't pay it off, if it's low enough, actually, you can almost waive the existence of that percentage in your debt to income ratio, because there's so few payments. Let's say if there's like 10 or fewer payments or something like that, you can
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah,
I was just gonna bring that up.
Yeah. So they can do things like that, and some things that you pay off, let's say if it's in a collection, could actually lower your credit score significantly before it raises it. So I would tell anyone to sit down with your lender and ask and allow them to look through your history, tell you the things that will increase your credit score, so it's a lot smoother process for you. So
yeah, I agree with that 100%. You never want to go into it blind or what someone told you, right? What Deonte had in the military, where he was at financially, credit wise, things like that, does not mean that that's where you are, right? So even though the VA loan is for military members, we all know all military members are not the same place at the same time, all the time, right? So be careful about hearing someone say, "Oh, I got this and I did this and I did that" on a VA loan. They may very well have done that, but that doesn't mean that that's where you are, right? So just kind of be careful with that. And like Deonte said, talk to your lender, talk to someone like me who can say, "Hey, this is your scenario. This is what we can do to make this the best loan for you individually."
And another one would be bringing a substantial amount of money to closing. Yes, you should have some upfront funds. You should be thinking of having a little bit of a nest egg to make sure if you have to do inspections or anything like that, you have that money set aside and that you have money for closing. There are scenarios where that can be waived, and even some cases I've had where the person came in expecting to pay closing costs and they received the check at the end because it was covered through other things. My last VA home loan, they came in prepared to pay additional amounts of money, and we got them to the point where they actually received a check for about $1,000 at closing. So they were able to go build their fence for their home and other things that they wanted because they didn't have to use that expense that they saved for it.
Yeah. So, and with that, to hit it from the other side of that, a VA loan does not mean no money.
No money.
that is not what that means. There's a lot of people get the term down payment and its definition confused a little bit, right? Down payment is your buy-in to something to say, "Hey, I'm serious about doing this. I'm gonna put some of my own money down, and I'm gonna let you help me cover the rest, which I'll finance from you." Right? That's what a down payment is. It is not, "Oh, I have no down payment, so I got nothing to bring to closing." Right. You have escrows, which is your taxes and insurance you got to include for. If you buy a home that's near water, you got flood insurance now. That goes into it. And we have to collect a certain amount of funds at closing for these things. Those are far and in between from a down payment. They're not that. Not to mention closing costs, right? And I want to touch base on this. Closing costs and cash to close are two very different terms.
Very true.
They get interchanged so much that they've kind of melded together, but they are not the same thing. Closing costs are the costs that you're going to pay a lender or a financier to be able to do the loan and finance you. Okay? Cash to close is the total amount of funds that you are responsible to bring to the closing table. So that includes down payments if you have one. That includes your escrow payments. That includes closing costs. That is literally everything. You give that wire or that cashier's check to the title company, you get keys, you walk out. Closing costs is not that.
Yeah, that's true. People think no money down means I'm just going to walk in, get my VA loan, and I'm not going to pay anything for it. And unfortunately, that's not exactly how it works. So
Well, it could be if we go back to like 2006.
Yeah.
It could be. It could be.
Subprime.
Yeah, subprime, all that stuff. Yeah, man. And I got one more thing I want to say too. When you talk about PCSing, deployments comes to my mind like instantly, right? You have some military members who get deployed and they're not here or readily available and things like that. The mortgage process is a very intense process. It's a document intensive process. Most military members obviously have POAs and things like that. Before you leave, that general POA that you get from the military cannot always be used in a mortgage transaction.
Correct.
So before you think that it can, always check with your lender and the title company, right? And you can always use your agent as well to help coordinate that too, to make sure that the POA that you have either can be used or can't. And if you know you're going to be deploying, go ahead and get it taken care of before you leave, especially if you're going to be buying a home and you want it when you get back.
And it goes without saying, make sure whoever you're giving that power to is utilizing it properly.
Yes.
That's a lot of power.
Yes.
Deonte, I'm wondering if you can speak to a little bit like the actual picking your house mistakes. Like I remember when we moved to Fort Campbell, and we didn't buy, we were just renting, but we've selected a home where we thought we wanted to live, and then it was not where we wanted to live, but we didn't know that until a year in. Do you see people make that mistake with home buying at all? Or is it like serious enough investment and decision that people are more careful than I was with picking a place to rent?
No, I think people still make the mistake quite a bit. Of course, I'm taking you to see a home, but the legwork to find out the quality of the schools, the legwork to find out, to maybe I say it's almost like casing the neighborhood. You have to look and see how the neighborhood works throughout the day and the evening. If it's loud, it wouldn't be great to find out that right across the street there's some huge band that plays all night or something like that, or there's some weird wildlife that you weren't prepared for, that you're very closer to the expressway or train or something like that you didn't know existed. So you're closer to a flooding area than you knew. So yes, it's quite a few mistakes when it comes to picking the home, and even the amount of home you're going to get. The great thing about having a VA loan is there is some backing behind it. The thing that isn't so great sometimes for everyone is just because you qualify for a certain amount of home doesn't necessarily mean you should buy that amount of home. You don't want to end up cash poor because you bought the big home, and yes, they say you can afford it, but you really can't. So, yeah.
Right. And to help put everybody at ease, Deonte hit on something, says you don't know if there's a band across the street or a freeway and all that stuff. That is the importance of having a knowledgeable and experienced real estate agent.
That's true.
Because it is literally, I'm not exaggerating, it is their job to know these things and to educate you so that way you don't have to. The biggest thing in a mortgage transaction, and you can stop me, or in the home buying process period, is to pick your agent, pick your lender, and then whatever they ask you to do, follow through on that.
Exactly.
You put your trust in them, and for us to use our expertise to get you there, we will. That's all you got to do at that point.
And those are considerations I make as a veteran myself. It's very important for me from understanding what these military and veterans are going through personally. I'm just that much more invested to ensure that they're getting as much of what they want, and I'm considering the things that they may not be thinking about at that particular time, because it's that important. And
you're absolutely right. The things that I didn't like about that place they didn't have anything to do with the home or the neighbor. It was the fact that when it got really windy, it got really, really windy and the house just shook, right? That has nothing to do with the home. How was I supposed to know it got really, really windy right there? I'd never been there before. And the other thing that, like very similar to what you're saying about the band across the street, right next door was a rental home, not unlike the one we were renting, that was full of single soldiers who were all living together. And they were really loud. And it just was not the right neighborhood combination for me. And they were loud, and it was just, a neighbor disaster. And I did not know that when we picked that house.
And I'm the realtor who knocks on the neighbors' doors and introduces myself, and before they even get to home and say, hey, just to kind of be, see what type of people are around you. It's important. I get to know my neighbors, and strangely in this time, people are a lot less comfortable. Someone just popping up at your door, but I'm the neighbor who's going to say, hey, I feel better if I know who lives around me, and you should feel better that I'm next door, and we have some buy-in to each other, that if something is happening, I can have a level of trust that you come help, and I do the same. So I think it's important to get to know your neighbors, but yeah, definitely wind, water, all those things. I've seen properties where the foundation, the home almost slides into a hole, and things like that, because you don't know those things, but there often are indicators, and unfortunately not everybody is paying attention to the details, and you're just looking for the home of your dreams. And we have to do our due diligence to make sure as much as we can about what's around the property, but the inside of the property as well. So.
You've given us some really incredible tips over this episode about mortgages and home picking. Things that I never even thought of, even though I own a home and I've moved a bunch of times. So I just am so grateful for that. Do you have maybe one or two more that you can walk us out with here? Just a couple of things we should maybe just leave with from this episode?
I would say that the home buying process is one of the most important purchases you're going to make in your lifetime. In most people's cases, it's the most significant purchase that you're going to make. I would tell people to take your time and to figure out what you want. If you find what you really like, don't try to shy away from putting in an offer. It's nothing worse than finding a home you love and hesitating, and someone else puts in an offer and undercuts the property that you like, right? But I will tell a person to look at as many houses as you possibly can, because that gives you a great idea of what you're getting for your money. Some people walk in the first home and they buy it, and then they have what they call buyer's remorse. The next house over looks even better, and it was less, So look at as many houses to see what you like. Get as much value you can and get as much out of it as possible. And a good realtor myself, I would love to take the people around to see as many houses as they want, to ensure that they get what they want. And once they make a decision, we're going to do everything we can to make sure you get into the home that you want. So we appreciate their service. We appreciate the people who are in and who have served. And we understand, personally, I understand how important it is. And, I do this because I love it, not because I have to. And I think that makes a big difference in the quality of service, is because they are me, right? So we're tied.
That's great. Well, we know if you're in the Tampa area, who to call. And for everyone else, I just love your advice about finding somebody who understands your lifestyle. There's lots of veteran real estate and networks and folks specializing in VA home loans, and certainly available to help. So thank you, guys. Thank you so much for being on the PCS with Military.com podcast today. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to PCS with Military.com. You can get all of the military news and information you need delivered straight to your inbox by subscribing to Military.com at military.com/subscribe. A special thanks to our sponsor, Navy Federal Credit Union, proudly serving all branches of the armed forces, veterans, and their families. No matter where you are in your military career, Navy Federal Credit Union has the products and resources to help you navigate your finances. Learn more at NavyFederal.org. Our members are the mission.